Okay, so today we're looking at the pedigree of George and Ginny Keller. Today we're looking at a recessive disease called ocular albinism. Recessive disease means that the disease is only expressed when both alleles that make the trait are recessive or represented by lowercase letters. If even one dominant allele or uppercase letter is present, then the trait is not expressed. A carrier is someone who has one dominant allele and has one recessive allele. This means that the individual person does not have the disease but can potentially pass it on to their offspring. Okay, so we're looking at the family of Ginny, right? So Ginny is way down here. This is Ginny, okay? And we're gonna look at this as a pedigree. So if your circles are females and squares are men. So as you can see, and if the circle square is colored in, it means you have ocular albinism. If it's half colored in, as seen here, it means you're a carrier. If it's blank, you're perfectly healthy, not a carrier, homozygous dominant. But if you're only a quarter of the way shaded in, it means that it's potentially you can be a carrier. You don't have the disease, but you could pass it on. Okay, so let's start with Ginny's great-grandmother. We know that Ginny's great-grandmother has ocular albinism because she has two lowercase recessive alleles. But we can conclude that her husband does not have the disease because it is known that Ginny's grandmother does not. But even though Ginny's mother does not have the disease, we can tell based on the genotypes or the genetic makeup of Ginny's great-grandmother and her great-grandfather that Ginny's grandmother would be a carrier or heterozygous. So Ginny's grandmother is automatically going to be a carrier because she's going to get one lowercase allele from her mother and one uppercase allele from her father. And since it's X-linked, her father only has one to give. Okay, so again, we go back down to Ginny's grandparents. It is known that neither of them have the disease. So again, we know that Ginny's grandmother is a carrier based on up there. And we know that Ginny's grandfather does not have the disease. And since men can't be carriers, since they only have one X chromosome, we know that he is homozygous dominant, which means he does not carry the recessive allele. And so, since we look at that, and if we perform this cross on a Punnett square, which we'll do a little bit later in a separate video, but if we perform this cross, we really get two outcomes when it comes to Ginny's mother. Either she's going to be a carrier or she's going to be homozygous dominant, and she's going to get two uppercase A alleles. There's a 50% chance of both. So as you can see, we don't really know her genotype. We can't tell. There's a 50% chance. So again, we're looking at Ginny's mother. There's a 50% chance. It's red because we do not know for sure what her genotype is. As you can see, we know her husband does not have the disease. There's no history in his family. So again, if she is a carrier, so 50% if she is a carrier, and she crossed with her husband, so let's assume she's a carrier, then there's another 50% chance that Ginny is also going to be a carrier. But if she's not a carrier, if she's homozygous, then Ginny will absolutely not get the disease. So let's look at this in terms of probability. So let's say there's a 50% chance that Ginny's mother is a carrier, and there's a 50% chance that if her mother is a carrier, that Ginny will also be a carrier. So in short, if you multiply those two probabilities together, there's a 25% chance of Ginny being a carrier because 50% that her mother is and 50% that she is given that her mother is a carrier. So again, we don't really know your genotype, Ginny, we're sorry. But if you look at the data, we did draw up some possible conclusions of your children. So if you are a carrier, 50% of your children will have the disease, ocular albinism, and 50% will be completely healthy. If you're a carrier, if you're not, all of your children will be carriers since your husband has the disease, but none of it will be expressed. So your options are, basically it's not a fatal disease, ocular albinism, just cause some blindness. We'll get into it more in a separate discussion about what ocular albinism is. But as you can see, 50% of your children will have the disease regardless of boy or girl. So if you have 3 children, 50% chance that a boy is going to be, that a boy will have ocular albinism. If you have 4 children, 25% chance that 2 of the girls will have ocular albinism. So again, not a huge chance. It's given you're a carrier though. If you're not a carrier, again, none of them will. And in short, if you multiply all those probabilities together, 50% chance, that your mother's a carrier, 50% times you're a carrier, times 50% that your children will get it. There's really only a 12.5 chance that any of your children will get it. So again, it's not the biggest risk in the world for you, but it still is a risk, and we'd like you to know that you have options here. Thank you for listening to us, and bye.